What is it like when you have to evict someone?
It's hard.
Can you talk about the eviction process?
Well, what we do at HGC, we have an eviction prevention program. We've had that in place for a number of years. Actually, when I came on board, we started to formalize that and had it in place even before COVID. And so we try to get out in front and work proactively with our residents who may be struggling to pay rent on time, connect with them, find out where we can be helpful, where we can connect with them with resources, and develop an action plan together to ensure their housing stability. We also created a Hope and Opportunity Fund. This is before the DHAP program, before you had the COVID rent relief program, that we have, that residents can apply to up to $1,000 from HGC to help them in crisis, because we recognize that it's only one crisis or an emergency that could cause somebody's instability, let alone deal with a pandemic over several years.
So you have this program, but are there people that you still have to evict after this?
Yes, yeah. We have an eviction rate of less than 1%, which is a pretty successful rate. And oftentimes I'm telling my staff that, you know, we can get better at that, but where I'd like to get better is actually to reduce our eviction filings so that we are working with our residents and we're not even taking them to court. Oftentimes we take them to court because there's usually this moment of where they're either non-responsive or they're not following through on their action plan, and we sort of need to take it to the next level. And typically the court will determine that they should be applying for state assistance or COVID rent relief funds if we were encouraging them to do that, but we're not following through. So oftentimes that moment of being in court is a moment where they realize the magnitude of the situation, and then we try to work with them through that. But there are these times where that resident is not a good fit for our community because they're not following through on what they said they were going to do. And that's a really important part of how we manage our properties. I call it compassionate accountability. We want to support you where you are and work with you, but we have agreements that we need to hold each other accountable for. You're going to do these 3 things, and as a landlord, we're going to do these 3 things. And if we do them, then we'll be able to get to a place where you're stable and that you'll be able to continue to live here. And sometimes that may not be the case for all residents.
So what happens then?
Well, we take them to court and they move through the eviction process. What we also try to do, if they're willing, is that we have resident services that will reach out and ask them how we could assist them in that process in terms of making sure that we're not creating like a situation of homelessness, but they have some place to go if they're willing to accept our guidance and support through that process. But that's a really challenging moment, and there's a lot of feelings in that moment that really sort of impair the relationship, to really trying to make sure that, you know, that they are, you know, not going to be, we're not creating a situation where there's an unknown of where they're going. Are they going to be staying with family or friends, or did they find another place to live or an apartment? So I think that's the piece that feels hard oftentimes, you know, when we have to come to that place. But we're really clear when we do come to that, because we have exhausted all of our efforts to really try and work with them. And again, it comes down to, you know, that personal responsibility to, you know, kind of show up and follow up on on your commitments.